My name is Vladimir and I welcome you to my channel Two Wars. The lives of women in the Gulag are described in the memories of those who went through this heartless state system. Wives, mothers, sisters, daughters, enemies of the people, and those convicted of anti-Soviet agitation under Article 58, foolishly ending up in the Gulag because of their loose tongues and the denunciations of treacherous people. Criminals didn't indeed write memoirs. I foresee the smart Alex who will actually say, "Author, the Gulag is really the main administration of corrective labor camps. How can you imprison someone there?" Oh, come on, how silly people are, thinking that people were taken in droves to the camp administration and that they probably just sat there in offices or hallways. It is understood that the word Gulag refers not to the administrative building in the literal sense, but to the entire system of Soviet camps. And when a person talks about the Gulag, in 90% of cases they mean the entire system of camps spread across the territory of the USSR. But let's get back to the topic. Let me remind you that Article 58 of the Criminal Code of the RSFSR, to put it briefly, was about responsibility for counter-revolutionary activities. The article had as many as 14 points, all of which addressed various forms of counter-revolutionary activities. You can easily find all this information on the internet if you Google it. I won't go over all the points here to keep the video concise. I can only summarize by saying that the article is purely political. The sentences there by USSR standards were not that long, but the problem was that almost anyone could be prosecuted under this article. Someone heard something somewhere, wrote a denunciation, and then it all started. Under Article 58, 3,777,000 people were convicted, and 642,000 were executed. These are data from Soviet sources, all of which are now publicly available. The article was repealed after Khrushchev's coup in 1961. This video also includes the recollections of 4 female Gulag prisoners. In the camps, women lived in swampy barracks as the men. Sometimes there were attempts at comfort, unbearable but slightly cozy. The bunks were less cramped, and there was one nightstand for every 2 prisoners. The windows were adorned with gauze curtains. The table in the middle of the barrack was always covered with a white tablecloth. Except the duty officer, there was no one. Afterwards, everyone returned exhausted and after washing up in the sink, fell onto bunks to sleep quickly. They had to get up before dawn, and there was only 1 day off per month, and that was only if the production plan was met. In this photo, you can see the men's and women's uniforms in one of the camps. Nina Gajanton recalls that their camp had 12 barracks, plus a dining hall, a bathhouse, a medical station, a storage room, and the administration office. The main part of the zone was occupied by a sewing factory, several large barracks, with long tables in 2 rows instead of bunks inside. There were rows of sewing machines placed so closely together that you could only turn the handle and send the stitched piece, sleeve, pocket, or collar further along. They marched to the factory in formation, passing through the checkpoint. They sat for 10 hours at the conveyor belt, sewing parts. The rest of the day was spent marching in formation to the cafeteria for lunch and dinner. Those who did not meet the quota in 10 hours were kept for 2 more hours. If that didn't help, they got a penalty ration, less bread, and no second course. You see the work clothes, overalls with pants, but there were also skirts. However, for the leading workers who exceeded their production plans on the 1 day off at the end of the month, dances with boys were organized. They brought in male leaders working at the furniture factory in the men's camp. The dances were held in the dining hall with an accordion. Irina Petrovskaya was fortunate. She ended up working on the construction of a railway where the work was hard. She had to haul soil in wheelbarrows, carry stones, and lay down sleepers and rails. A lot of energy was spent on this labor-intensive work, and the meager camp rations were not enough. Everyone lost weight and turned into sinewy wretches, resembling greyhounds. Petrovskaya claims that it was easier for the weak to maintain their health. They were sent to do auxiliary household work. There, the women gradually adapted and lived relatively well, and the strong and healthy ones.
They were indeed caught in the grinder of production and mercilessly crushed, notes Irina.
How was the selection process? Simple. All newly arrived women were sent to the bathhouse, then naked, examined. Surprise and indignation. There were not only doctors but also camp authorities, who decided with the help of the medics which work assignments to give to whom. After that, the newly arrived women were given clothing and assigned to barracks. In Karlag, the Karaganda camp in Kazakhstan, there was a specially organized subdivision for the wives of traitors to the motherland, which the women referred to by the acronym Al-Zir, Akmolinsk Camp for Wives of Traitors to the Motherland. Previously, this place was an uninhabited steppe where winter temperatures reached -40 degrees. In summer, the unbearable heat tormented them while the wind was a constant companion all year round. The camp simultaneously held approximately 8,000 female prisoners, with each barrack designed to accommodate 300 people. Similar subdivisions were located in the Tomsk and Temnikov camps. On August 15, 1937, the NKVD issued an order according to which the wives of enemies of the people, sentenced by the military collegium of the Supreme Court of the USSR and military tribunals, were sent to camps for a term of 5 to 8 years, while their children were taken away and sent to special regime orphanages. Investigations into cases did not drag on. 2 interrogations were held, where the women were asked if they were aware of their husbands' anti-Soviet activities. In the special camp sections for the wives of traitors, the conditions were stricter than for ordinary criminals. Women were forbidden to write letters to their children, and if they sent inquiries about the fate of their husbands, they usually received a terse response, 10 years without the right to correspond. It was only in the early 90s that it became known that such a formulation implied that the husband had been executed. In the camps, where the majority were women, they often had to perform hard labor that was usually done by men in other labor camps. There were separate categories, similar to criminal caste in prison environment. Here is an excerpt the memoir of Elena Glinka.
The transport consisted of domestic offenders and decree violators. There were a few criminals, wretched and unfortunate beings with identical, once and forever and irreparably shattered fates. First, the parents were executed or perished in the war. A couple of years later, an escape from the NKVD orphanage. Then the street, poverty and hunger. And so it went until the arrest for stealing a potato or a carrot from a stall. Branded, rejected by society, and completely embittered by it all, they very soon became real and extremely dangerous criminals. And some were already hardened repeat offenders, known in camp slang as bugs.
Elderly women, who were not able to perform useful work, were placed in a separate barrack, which was jokingly called the barrack for minors aged 60 to 80. Yasnopolskaya recalls that their camp had another separate barrack for those convicted for working in the oldest profession.
There had been a purge of the cities, and they were all expelled from there. Among them were many suffering from occupational diseases.
If there were women in the camp who were detained along with their infants or toddlers, there was a separate barrack specifically for mothers in the camp. All the women were drawn to the children, usually called the mothers by their kids' names like Lyubochka's mom, Vasya's mom, Vanya's mom, didn't know the mother's actual names. In conclusion, a story was told by Anna Larina. She was imprisoned with Dina from Odessa, whose husband abandoned her and 2 children years ago. He never got in touch, and she hadn't heard anything about him until she was arrested as the wife of an enemy of the people. It turned out that her ex-husband, who had made a party career in another city and held a high position, fell victim to the repressions as often happened. No explanations helped Dina. Officially, their marriage had not been dissolved. That's how they lived. The optimists regularly brought joyful news that there would be an amnesty by May 1st or November 7th. They tried to hope for the best. And what do you think? How often did women end up in camps on fabricated charges? Write your opinion in the comments, like and subscribe to my channel. This will greatly help its promotion.